The sacred lord's furious roar echoing throughout the hall of the Taishuan scared land, where many people had gathered. Today is the day enthronement of our Taishuan sacred land. How dare a mere inner disciple act so recklessly within the grand hall? A boy standing in front of them retorted and questioned, "Bullshit, is Taishuan sacred land, one of the so-called 6 scared lands in the eastern wilderness, really this shameless?" He flinched his fists and said, taking advantage of the weak, currying favor with those in power. "From start to end, you have never once considered the will of the saintess, betrothing her to someone whom she has never even met before." He saw a girl standing near the throne and said angrily, "If justice isn't served today, I don't want to be known as a disciple of Taishuan's sacred land." People looked at him shockingly and a boy asked to a girl, "Has Yi Chen gone crazy? How does he have the audacity to say such things in the grand hall?" Girl replied, "Although he's quite talented, if he angers the one who came from the upper realms, I am afraid the entire Taishuan sacred land will suffer alongside him." Lord looked at him angrily and said, "Yi Chen, is it? I remember you, only after years of struggle during the 100 Dynasties War, are you able to enter the Taishuan sacred land from within the small Tianqing region. And now you're telling me that you want to give up your title as an inner disciple of the Taishuan sacred land?" He was enraged. His aura erupted. A huge pressure surged throughout the room and the disciple around here affected and hurriedly braced themselves. Yi Chen also firmly stood in ground. Yi Chen said, "I was merely feeling a sense of injustice for the saintess. I can't just watch as she helplessly gets thrown into the fiery pits of hell." A man roared angrily, "How dare you compare the young master to a fiery pits of hell? You arrogant and disrespectful child." The girl looked at the young master and called his name. He was closing his eyes and sitting peacefully. He calmly took up the cup of tea in the table beside him. After he surveyed his surroundings he thought, "I, a transgressor, found that my character was involved in an inexplicable situation from the moment I awoke. And my role as Gu Chang'e seems to be a villain. In your usual comics, I'd be the type of villain who's just a stepping stone for the protagonist and gets constantly face-slapped and humiliated by them. The only difference is that I have a mysterious game-like system." A window was showing in front of him and telling him his character and identity. He took a sip of the tea and thought, according to the system, the fortune levels are divided, from low to high, into red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue and purple. An ordinary person is only at the red fortune value. The young man named Yi Chen fortune green, he really is the fortune chosen and I. He laughed and thought, it said that villains don't live long. My black-colored fortune sure is a constant reminder of that. Yi Chen pointed him and said angrily, "Gu Chang'e, stop being so self-conceited and pretentious. If you have the guts, say something." Chang'e closed his eyes. Prince looked at him confusingly and asked Yi Chen angrily, "How impudent, how dare you call the young master by his name?" A man also said angrily, "Yi Chen, today, you have repeatedly provoked this act under the presence of everybody here. I am certain you harbor ill intentions." Another man also said, "That's right, how dare you speak so rudely to young Master Gu? These crimes cannot be forgiven." Another said, "He cannot differentiate between heaven and earth. How pretentious, this Yi Chen." All people talking against him. He looked at them surprisingly and thought, what's going on? Why is everyone trying to get on the good side of Gu Chang'e? My talent is obviously the highest within the sect, I am the sect's future. He looked at the girl and thought confusingly, even Chinga isn't speaking for me, why? But we have such a close relationship. Chang'e thought while closing his eyes, I hate to admit it, but seeing the fortunes chosen being humiliated really is quite satisfying. Yi Chen again shouted angrily, "Gu Chang'e, do you really think you can just pretend to be lost in thought without saying a word? Other than taking advantage of others, what else can you do?" Sacred Lord said angrily, "This is generally is handless of consequences." Prince said, "Sacred Lord, I'll take Yi Chen down and make amends to young Master Gu." Prince jumped and attacked on Yi Chen. Yi Chen said loudly, "Bring it on," and used his inner energy and make fire mana against the Commander Blue mana. Commander attacked him and he stopped his attack by his power. Some people watching them shockingly and some looked happy as they enjoyed it. An old man said, "Yi Chen is biting off more than he can chew," daring to confront Taishuan's sacred prince head-on. Prince Chuxuan's cultivation is at the pseudo-transcendent realm, whereas Yi Chen cultivation is only at the soul palace realm. Moreover, the prince has got the thunder hell physique. Chuxuan's strength has improved again. This battle's outcome had already been decided. Gu Changa looked at him and thought, how naive, this world, the cultivation levels are, mortal patty, spiritual sea, soul palace, transcendent, omnipotent, sacred lord, sacred emperor, sacred sovereign and quasi-god realms. If Yi Chen cannot even win a simple cross-realm battle, he would not be worthy of the title fortunes chosen. Yi Chen was stopping Prince Punch by his punch, he put his all-power and Prince was pushed back. He looked at Yi Chen shockingly. Yi Chen said with smile, Sacred Prince, nice skills. Red mana was emitting from his body. Sacred Lord looked this shockingly and said, how this could be. Two girls were standing in the crowd and one with black hairs said surprisingly, Yi Chen's cultivation is only at the Soul Palace realm, so just how did he block a blow from the Sacred Prince? The girl with purple hair said happily, Brother Chen is so handsome. A boy was standing in front of them said angrily, shut up, do you all want to offend young Master Gu as well? Gu Changa thought, as expected of a protagonist, his ability to humiliate and face slap is at the highest level. He looked at the Chinga and thought it seems like everything Yi Chen has done today is to prevent the Taishuan scared lord daughter from being married to me. This woman with a yellow fortune value of 350 should be So Su Chinga, the female lead of this world. Since I've already offended our dear protagonist. Changa asked Chinga, have you always had this much confidence in Yi Chen? Chinga listened him confusingly. He said again trying so hard to act indifferent, are you trying to make me think that you have no relationship with him? Are you perhaps afraid of how I will deal with him? What a clever woman. He removed the lid from the cup and drank tea. Chinga listened him and looked at him. He put the cup on table and said, it's empty. She poured tea in cup and put his hand on her hand and asked her, I'm neither a wolf nor a tiger, so why is Miss Su so nervous? She looked at his hand and replied scarily, I'm not. He held her hand in his and said again, the tea is hot, so leave this to the servants, it'd be a pity if you injured your hand. She looked uncomfortable. He looked at the window, Su Chinga has had a subtle change of heart. Protagonist Yi Chen's fortune value was 10. He thought confusingly, wait, I can do that? Yi Chen looked at them and shouted angrily, Gu Changa, how dare you touch her? Changa thought happily, it seems like things have started to become interesting. Yi Chen shouted angrily, Gu Changa, get your dirty hands off her. A huge mana was emitting from his body. Sacred Prince said, your opponent is me. Yi Chen looked at him angrily and said, Chu Xian, do you really think that I would not dare kill you just because you are the Sacred Prince? Changa looked at them and thought, going by the usual plotline, I'm afraid Yi Chen will overcome all odds and defeat Chu Xian. Then, he will take the opportunity to make a bet and challenge me or something and rely on his fortune to control his situation and safely retreat. With his talent for cultivation, it's certain that he will come back years later and avenge today's shame. When that time comes, would not I be as good as dead? But unfortunately for him, I am a transgressor, someone who is too familiar with this common trope. How could I let him succeed this easily? I refuse to leave my life in the hands of some bullshit subscript writing. He stand up and said, boring. Chinga and Sacred Lord looked him confusingly. He jumped, people looked at him shockingly. He stand in front of the Yi Chen and Chu Xian and said, since this matter is related to me, there's no need to bother Chu Xian. Chu Xian called him confusingly, young master. Yi Chen asked him angrily, and now you are putting on airs? What, do you think I am afraid of you? Changa replied calmly, is the cause of your fearlessness ignorance? Yi Chen listened him confusingly. A mana emitted from the Changa body and pushed Yi Chen back. Chu Xian fell down. Yi Chen said, insignificant tricks. Changa used his all inner energy and put a lot of pressure, the glass of the door was broken by his pressure and Yi Chen fell down on knee. Changa asked him, Yi Chen, how did you want me to respond to your words? People surrounding them hardly bared the pressure, a man said shockingly, his aura is imposing enough to make people feel despair, young Master Gu is this strong? A man standing near him replied with smile, he's not from the upper realms for nothing. Yi Chen really doesn't know his place. Chinga was standing with the support of the table and put her hand on the table and looked shocked. Sacred Lord thought, as expected of someone from the upper realm, he's already too strong at such a young age. We really can't afford to offend him. Yi Chen was laying in his feet. Changa looked at the window which show that, you have face-slapped the fortunes in public. Yi Chen's fortune has decreased by 10 points and the host's fate value has increased by 50. Changa thought, the fate value can be increased? Since the fate value can be used to raise a technique's tier, it would naturally raise my cultivation as well. He put his soul in the system and said, System, how much will my faith value increase if I kill Yi-Chen right now? Window appeared and showed, those with great fortune will inexorably have heaven's protection, taking your current fortune value into consideration, doing so will put your own fortune at risk of being eaten away. He asked Ogwin, does that mean offending the fortunes chosen will lead to bad luck? No wonder my fortune value is black, I really am a villain through the through. Window showed again, fortune is an unpredictable and inexplicable factor, it's not difficult to kill Yi-Chen with your current strength but it will trigger a series of unknown variables, because you are the biggest variable. He said again, so what you are saying is that although I should not kill him now, I can still gradually increase my own fortune level by reaping away from his and strike when the time is right. Window showed that, correct, the same applies to those with the close relationship to the protagonist. Chang'e opened his eyes and thought, this means trying to affect Yi-Chen by forcing Su Qingge won't work. Sacred Lord laughed and said, although young Master Gu is so young, his cultivation is already fathomless. An old man in the crowd said to another old man, a mere wisp of his breath makes us all tremble with fear, young Master Gu really is a god amongst man. The other old man replied, I naively thought that Taishuan's sacred land, inherited by generations upon generations of prudent men and owning territory that spans thousands of miles, is already a sovereign power of the world. But today, after seeing your Master Gu with my own eyes, I realized that no matter how strong you think you are, there will always be someone who is stronger. Gu Chang'e looked at thee and said, you all think too highly of me, my strength is nothing worth mentioning. Chu Xian bent his head mad said, it's humiliating, my poor cultivation has forced young Master Gu to personally intervene. He replied, it's fine, and looked at Yi-Chen. People were talking about them. Yi-Chen heard their voices, someone said, young Master Gu has already shown mercy. What is he doing there still? Yi-Chen really doesn't know what's good for himself. Yi-Chen listened them angrily and said, impossible, how could this be? It's all because of you, it all because of Gu Chang'e. And stand up and attacked Gu Chang'e and said angrily, go to hell and punched towards the Chang'e. An old man shouted angrily, Yi-Chen, how dare you? Yi-Chen hand stopped in front of the Chang'e face by a force. Chang'e was standing straight by holding his hand on his back. Yi-Chen looked this confusingly. Chang'e said, you overestimate yourself and opened his hand and put force on him by his hand. Yi-Chen fell down back and got injured, blood comes out from his body. Chang'e put her hand on face by shock. An old man said again, Yi-Chen, you have not only completely ignored these sect rules, but have also disrespected our distinguished guest over and over again. Immediately seal his cultivation and throw him in the dungeon, where he shall await for young Master Gu's punishment. A man said, earlier, young Master Gu had already spared him, and yet Yi-Chen still dared to sneak attack? A girl standing near to him replied, I know, right? How shameless, he has embarrassed our entire sect. Two man was holding Yi-Chen from his hands. Yi-Chen shouted angrily, let go of me, I'm the most talented disciple of the sect, I'm the sect's hope and future. Chang'e jumped and stand in front of Qing'e and asked her, Saintess Qing'e, I heard that the moon is especially beautiful tonight, would you be so kind as to bless me with your beauty? She listened him confusingly. Sacred Lord laughed and said, young Master Gu is able to remain this elegant even after what just happened, with such an open-minded young man, my daughter will definitely be willing to comply. Yi-Chen called her name helplessly. She looked at Sacred Lord. Sacred Lord was looking her angrily. Sacred Lord thought, our sect's future for the next 100 years in the hands of this man, you cannot afford to make the wrong decision here, Qing'e. She closed her eyes and said, all right. Yi-Chen eyes opened with shock and he fainted. Window showed that, Yi-Chen mental state has been damaged. Yi-Chen fortune value decreased by 100, the host's fate value increased by 500. Chang'e thought happily, so that's how it's work, this fortune chosen one is nothing but a crop for my system to harvest. It is a bit troublesome, but the process of slowly torturing and until its last breath it's quite fun, isn't it? In the full moon night a man was standing in the roof of a room and wearing a hoodie that covered him. In the room Sacred Lord said to Qing'e, I know you are interested in Yi-Chen, but the current situation. She replied, I understand, Yi-Chen can't even come close to the Lord and the benefits he can give us. Sacred Lord exhaled breath. She said again, Father, it's all right. I will go pay him a visit now. A man who was standing in the roof and listening there talked despair. Chang'e was sitting on the bed by crossing his legs and closing his eyes and asked, "What did you find out?" A man was standing in front of him. He was the man who was listening the talk of Sacred Lord and Chang'e. He replied, "You were right, young master." The sacred Taishuan Sacred Lord summoned Su Chang'e and told her about all his sorrows. Chang'e looked at him. Man said again, "The current Taishuan sacred land may look strong, but does not amount to much. Their strongest individual, the Supreme Elder, had actually passed away in a sitting posture 300 years ago. It is just that the outside world has yet to learn of his death. Thus, you are the support they currently need the most, young master. Besides, the Taishuan Sacred Lord wife is a noble lady from the upper realms. Back then, she was catched by the upper realms forces and sent back there. He also wants to search for traces of his wife by having Su Chang'e grab onto you." Chang'e smiled and said, "So I guessed right?" He looked at the man and said again, "Right, keep an eye on Yi Chen, who is currently imprisoned." Man asked him, "You seem to be interested in Yi Chen?" Chang'e replied, "He's blessed with a great fortune, he can help me obtain many opportunities." Man bent his head and said, "I understand." Chang'e inhaled breath heavily and said, "I have 2 characters with great fortune right in the palm of my hands, but I cannot harvest them just yet no matter how much I want to." Window appeared and showed, character, Gu Chang'e. Identity, true discipline of the Daoist deity palace. Physique and bloodline, demonic heart, Daoist bones. Cultivation, pinnacle of the Sacred Lord realm. Techniques, immortal Daoist code, incarnation of 10,000 demons talent, deity devouring demonic art. Fate value, 550. Fortune value, 40. System shop, will be automatically unlocked and the host's fate value reaches 1000. Congratulations on completing the first face slapping of the day. You have successfully passed the beginner phase. You have obtained a reward. And a gift box showed. Chang'e looked at the window and asked confusingly, "I starter pack?" He clicked on the box. Box opened and window showed, "Congratulations on your explosive luck. You have received a ray-destroying talisman, a rain now cloak and a broken third of the world seed." Chang'e looked at the seed and asked, "What is this broken world seed?" Window showed, "After refining the complete world seed, you can nurture a world within your body. You will have endless good luck and be in control of your own life and death." Chang'e thought happily, "Interesting. I can create a world within my body. If I complete the world seed, can anyone in this world kill me?" And asked the window, "System, use up all my points." Window showed that, cultivation, pinnacle of the Sacred Lord realm. Techniques, immortal Daoist code, incarnation of 10,000 demons talent, devils devouring of immortals. Fate value, 550. Fortune level, 40 and a black flower. System shop, will be automatically unlocked and the host's fate value reaches 1000. Chang'e closed his eyes and created a mana by using his inner energy. He opened his eyes and a line of strong mana emitted and break the roof and goes towards the sky. People looked the line shockingly. A man said, "What a terrifying aura is that?" Sacred Lord also shocked by looking at this and said, "That." Chang'e also looked at the aura confusingly. A reflection of her appeared and said to her, "Look at yourself now, look at it from a different perspective. Not only does Gu Chang'e have such a tranquil mind and heart, he's even that powerful. He's way more interesting than the Yi Chen and all whatever his name was. We are 2 souls in one body, I know you." She put her hand on Chang'e chin. Chang'e turned and said, "Shut up." Reflection looked at her shockingly. Chang'e looked at his hand and said, "Is this the power of the Sacred Emperor realm? In a moment, it allowed all of my many talents to advance by step. What a terrifying power." His fated points became 0 on window. He said, "Breaking through just 1 level of the immortal diagnosed code consumes so many fate points. This technique should be pretty high level, forget it. As long as the system exists, I will have more than enough faith points in the future." He stand up and laughed and said again, "Yi Chen, although you look pitiful when cultivation with all your might, you're such a pretty boy when I'm extorting your fortune. I hope you can contribute a lot of fortune. If I finish harvesting your fortune too early, it will be the death of you." In the prison, Yi Chen was coughing and thought, "What the hell is going on? In the past 3 years, no matter the challenge I faced, I was always able to escape the jaws of death and come out intact. When have I ever experienced such humiliation? He punched on the wall and said angrily, Gu Changa. He called someone name, Shaochen. A red mana started emitting from his ring and the mana convert into a girl. Yi Chen looked at her shockingly and called her master. Yi Chen looked at girl and asked her, Master, where were you? Why did not you come out and help me earlier? She replied, At that time, I sensed the presence of a powerful spirit. I suspected that whoever it belonged to had something to do with the enemy behind my downfall, though I could not dare to reveal myself. Then again, you should not have been so reckless. Yi Chen said angrily, Reckless? What, do you also want me to give up on Su Chinga? Her physique is. She put her finger on his lips and said, We still need to give that some more thought. Gu Changa not only has terrifying origins but also has powerful people backing him. We cannot afford to confront him head-on. He pushed her hand back and said, So what? I was merely unlucky for a moment. She looked at him and thought, You are not learning from your restlessness, but instead becoming even more arrogant. You are still too immature, and said, Our top priority is to get you out of your current situation. I have a feeling that there are many powerful masters trapped within this dungeon. Maybe. Yi turned his head mad said happily, I have an idea. The only reason Taishuan's sacred land has owned the dragon veins for hundreds of years is because the sect feared the Supreme Elders, but what the outsiders don't know is that the Supreme Elder died 300 years ago. Master, if you spread this information, the sect that have been coveting the dragon veins for themselves would undoubtedly collectively attempt to conquer the palace and then I could escape in the midst of the chaos. She replied, If that were to happen, I am afraid that the Taishuan's sacred land would be destroyed. They have looked after and nurtured you for so many years. He shouted, I don't care, they were the ones that treated me helplessly, I want every one of them to taste the consequences of offending me. A man was looking at them behind the wall and thought, was the opportunity young Master Gu was talking about earlier this remnant soul of a once powerful master? In the palace servants were cleaning the floor and some was repairing the walls. On the top of the mountain, under a roof with opened walls, Gu Changa was sitting on the chair and Chinga was sitting in front of him. Chinga said, Young Master Gu, your words were quite interesting, is the upper realm really as big as you described? Her reflection said, I told you, Gu Changa is young and thoughtful man. He's much better than that Yi Chen or whatever his name was. Gu Changa said, whether the upper realm is big or not, why don't you go mad see for yourself? He take a sip of tea. She replied, Young master, you must be joking, without these the strength of a quasi-god, the barrier cannot be broken. Nowadays, how would anybody be able to reach the upper realms? Even the most powerful cultivators of all the sacred lands in the eastern wilderness are only at the pseudo-sacred emperor realm. He said, is being at the quasi-god realm really that powerful? Once you reach the upper realms, you'll realize just how insignificant the quasi-god realm is. She looked at him and asked, Young master, if we were in the upper realms, would you be able to protect me? He asked her confusingly, what do you mean by that? She replied, I know that it may be difficult for me to please you with my current status, but I am willing to serve you for the rest of my life. Window showed that, Su Chinga temperament towards Gu Changa has changed. Yi Chen fortune Kale decreased by 40, the host's fate value increased by 200. Changa thought, if the development route of a character related to the fortunes chosen changes, his fortune very good decreased in exchange for an increased fate value? If so, things would become much easier. He said, please me. It seems like Saintess Chinga attitude sure does change quickly, are you sacrificing yourself, so that I release Yi Chen? She looked at him shockingly and flinched his fists and said, would not dare do such a thing, I know what my looks are unworthy of young master's profound eyes. Everything I am doing is merely to express my sincerity in hopes that young master won't take what happened early today at the Great Hall of Heart. He put the cup on table and said, Yi Chen, he's so infatuated with you that he did not hesitate to cut ties with the Taishuan sacred land, yet this is how you pay him back? She replied, I am incapable of dissolving Yi Chen mistakes, for the sake of my father and the sect, nothing else is more important. Changa smiled at her. She looked at him and said, Young master. Truth be told, my bodily constitution is of the 9 in mystic beauty physique. No one else knows about this. Changa freeze at her words. Window showed that, Su Chinga has began to show a slight intent of submission. Yi Chen fortune value decreased by 40, the host's fate value increased by 200. He thought, the 9 mystic beauty physique? That's an excellent physique for refining, how generous of her to willing share her secret with me. Yichen fortune value has now decreased to less than 400 points. Su Qingge is an incredibly cunning woman who values the bigger picture. She took both the Taishuan sacred land predicament and my status into consideration before making a decision. I cannot exploit others, reap the benefits and enjoying hanging out with such a pretty lady all at the same time. Being a villain sure is sweet. She looked at him and called his name, but he didn't listen. She called him again, young master. He came out of his thoughts and said, the 9 mystic beauty physique is one of the best physiques for refining, and yet you told me this that easily? She flinched her fists mad, said, my family's sect was built up on the painstaking efforts of my ancestors for thousands of years. The value of my life pales in comparison. As long as young Master Gu can save Taishuan's sacred land from its demise, I'm willing to offer myself to you. He looked at her and thought, system, she willing to offer herself to me, eating her wouldn't result in any backlash of fortune, would it? Window showed that, due to the current fortune of Su Qingge and Yi Chen, receiving the backlash of fortune is highly likely if you proceed any further. Chang'e thought, damn the heavens and my shitty fortune. I knew that nothing would come so easily. He said, you told me that secret easily, aren't you afraid that I would leak it? Qingge replied, I firmly believe in your character, young master. He stand up and turned his back towards her and said, I will act as if I haven't heard anything about you possessing a rare constitution. Saintess Qingge, if you were trying to move me by telling me that, please return home. She called him scarily, young master, and trying to touch him. He stopped his hand and said, Saintess, please have some self-respect. She looked him confusingly and said, I. He didn't listen to her and descended on the stairs. She looked at his back, her reflection said, even a beauty who was sent right to his doorsteps could not pique his interest. As I thought, this Gu Chang'e really is a mysterious man. She sat down and exhaled and said, if I think about it carefully, young Master Gu didn't even do anything wrong in the Great Hall today, but I preconceived him to be the bad guy anyway. Was I wrong about him? Window showed Gu Chang'e that, Su Qingge has changed her views, fortune value increased by 20 and fate value increased by 100. Gu Chang'e thought, so, Su Qingge is having a character development? If that is so, I should go get a harvest from Yi Chen himself. A man standing in front of Gu Chang'e and said, just as you speculate, Yi Chen is indeed accompanied by the remnant spirit of a once powerful master. Gu Chang'e came at the Yi Chen prison and looked at him. Yi Chen looked at him angrily and said, Gu Chang'e, what are you here for? Chang'e replied, obviously, I came to visit you. He smiled and said again, I came here to pay my respects to the master backing you. Yi Chen said, what are you talking about? I don't know what you mean, and pretend like he doesn't know anything. Chang'e said, enough pretending, who can you fool with that expression on your face? Senior, are you going to keep hiding? That isn't very becoming of a master. Voice came from the Yi Chen finger ring, I didn't plan to become your enemy, young master. She came out if the ring. Yi Chen looked at him shockingly and called her. She said, so there's no reason to come and put a remnant soul like me in such a difficult position. Chang'e said with smile, you misunderstand me, senior. I was just curious as to which omnipotent being was able to guide an idiotic trash like Yi Chen to such heights, and I thought it would be an old grandpa, but it's a young lady. Yi Chen shouted angrily, Gu Chang'e, who are you calling trash? Chang'e said, there have always been incidents where pearls were put before swine. As the saying goes, good birds choose to rest in the best trees and good vassals choose to work for the best master. Isn't staying with Yi Chen a waste of your talents? She looked at him and thought, he's trying to challenge our relationship? Yi Chen shouted angrily, you despicable bastard, Gu Chang'e, not only did you steal my Qingge, now you even have your eyes on my master. Chang'e replied, I stole your Qingge? I am not the one to blame for that. You should know that from the very start, she did everything of her accord. Yi Chen shouted angrily, bullshit. Chang'e said, humans climb upwards and water flows downwards. Such is the law of existence that applies to all in our university. He put pressure on the wooden wall of the prison and broke it. Yi Chen and the master girl looked at him shockingly. Chang'e said again, but you really want the best for your master, then don't hold her back. Do you really think that a remnant soul could remain in this world for long? He came in and said to Master, Senior, if you are willing to follow me, not only can I help you regain a physical body, I can even help you return to the peak of your prime. Yi Chen shouted, Gu Chang'e, this is between me and my master, if you keep spouting rubbish, I will tear your mouth apart. Window showed that Yi Chen's mental star has been continually damaged. His fortune value has decreased by 20, and the host's fate value has increased by 100. Chang'e thought, success, and said, Senior, you must already know that even without mentioning my background, I'm still way more outstanding than Yi Chen in all other aspects. I know that Yi Chen can provide you with soul energy to nourish your soul, but judging by the current progress, isn't he more of a confinement for you? Yi Chen looked at her and said, Master, don't listen to that rubbish, he must be trying to trick you. She thought, is he really just trying to damage our relationship? Gu Chang'e is strong enough to kill Yi Chen without much trouble, so why would he need to do this? Am I overthinking it? Is he only trying not get me to join him? To be honest, Gu Chang'e hasn't done anything wrong. Yi Chen, however, kept on provoking and causing trouble for him. Chang'e asked her with smile, have you finished deliberating? She shook her head and said, Yi Chen was the one who saved me from my demise, so naturally I would not leave him now. Yi Chen got happy at her words. Gu Chang'e said, I will give you some time to think it through. If you change your mind, I will look past Yi Chen's past offenses and let him go. Even having the Taishuan's sacred land retract his punishment and restore him to his former position would not be impossible. I could give him Su Qingge too. Yi Chen looked him angrily. She said, Young Master Gu, please stop. I appreciate your earnesty. Gu Chang'e said, you should really think it through. Before I leave, I have a present for you. He raised his two finger and a box appeared. He held the box in front of her said, open it. Yi Chen and girl looked at the box confusingly. She opened it and said surprisingly, the ancient soul-repairing sacred medicine, the mind convergence pill. In the prison, Yi Chen was standing facing the wall and master was standing behind him. Yi Chen said to his master, I understand it all now, Gu Chang'e, you damned bastard, he wants to humiliate me and take away everything that I own. What I least expected was my trusted master forming a compromise with my sworn enemy over a single pill. Master was standing holding the box and listened him shockly. She said angrily, what the hell you talking about? Everything I did was to help you get out of here. He turned and said angrily, if you're really saying that it's all for me, then do as I said and leak that information. She looked at him confusingly and takes deep breath and said, since you insist, I'll do as you say. She looked at the box in her hand. Yi Chen became happy and laughed. He said, I knew you'd come around, master. I knew you wouldn't just abandon me like that. She started disappearing. Window showed that, an estrangement is now in effect. A crack has formed in the relationship between Yi Chen and his master. Yi Chen's fortune value has decreased by 80, and the host's fate value has increased by 400. Chang'e was near the window and his detective was standing behind him. Detective said, young master, if all you really needed was only that remnant soul, why didn't you just kill Yi Chen? Chang'e said, Elder Ming, do you still remember why we descended to the lower realm? Ming asked, was it for that absolute evil weapon? Chang'e replied, that's right, we came for the 8-Baron Demon Halberd, the weapon of the 8-Baron Demon God of the ancient times. If EE follow the regular plot line, Yi Chen will probably accidentally enter an ancient ruin due to his luck, gain the evil weapon's approval at the last second and then he would completely turn the tables against the Taishuan, but now, he can only be my treasure seeking that. Chang'e looked at Ming and said again, keep a close eye on Yi Chen, I will be in seclusion for a while. Ming replied, understood. Window appeared in front of Chang'e and showed that, character, Gu Chang'e. Identity, true disciple of the Daoist deity palace. Physique and bloodline, demonic heart, Daoist bones. Cultivation, early stage of the sacred emperor realm. Techniques, immortal Daoist code level 7, incarnation of 10,000 demons talent, deity demonic art. Fate value, 1100. Fortune value, 60 and black follower. System shop, unlocked. He looked at the window and said, open the system shop. System shop opened and showed that, divine talents, arts and techniques and supporting items. He clicked on the arts and techniques. Window showed that, due to insufficient faith value, techniques at the supreme grade and above cannot be unlocked. Techniques at the heavenly grade and below have not been collected. In the art and techniques there were 5 different categories, and the first one was locked, which is supreme grade techniques. The 4 techniques below were unlocked, that were primordial sport techniques, heavenly grade techniques, earthly grade techniques, and profound grade techniques. Innate divine chant had fate value of 1000. Chang'e thought, a heavenly grade technique that lets cultivators advance all the way to the transcendent realm actually only requires 50 fate value? He clicked and said, this is the one. Window showed that, primordial spirit techniques, innate divine chant, 1000 points of fate value consumed, and a light absorbed in him. 3 days later, Sacred Lord and Chang'e was standing in the air in front of many peoples who were standing on the flying monster. Sacred Lord said, Zhao Tian of the Yangshu Sacred Land, Chu Wuji of the Great Sun Empire, and Xiaohua of the ancient Xiao family have to come to pay respects to the Sacred Master of Taishuan Sacred Land. For 3 of such superior caliber, who are only steps away from the Sacred Emperor realm, to personally leave your forces here, what an impressive spectacle. A man standing in front of him wearing a leader suit laughed and said, cut the crap, Su Taishuan, your Taishuan Sacred Land has relied on Supreme Elder Su to forcibly occupy the spiritual veins for thousands of years. Now that he has passed on, isn't it time for our sects to enjoy this spiritual veins too? He was from the ancient Xiao family, Xiaohua. Another man who was from the Yangshu Sacred Land, Zhao Tian, also said, that's right, on account that we are all from the top sects of the Eastern Wilderness. If we take the initiative to offer these spiritual veins and demote yourself by 1 level, I will definitely leave you a way out, otherwise. Sacred Lord shouted angrily, these spiritual veins have been the foundation of my sacred land for the thousands of years, how can they be handed over just like that? What a bunch of hypocritical old fools, do you really think that my Taishuan Sacred Land is an easy target? Someone said, it seems like Supreme Master Su is not willing to cooperate, is that right? Sacred Lord looked him shockingly and called his name, Chu Wuji. A man was sitting in the palanquin, was the Chu Wuji from the Great Sun Empire. Chu Wuji said, surely, you don't think that the Taishuan Sacred Land of today can still go up against all of us on your own? Sacred Lord said, even though I don't know where you got the news from, did you really believe that without the Supreme Elder, my Taishuan Sacred Land has no one else to rely on? Chang'e, standing behind the Sacred Lord, called him worriedly. He looked at her and asked, has young Master Gu not come out of seclusion? She replied, last time, I was too hasty, and lost favor with young Master Gu. Now, I'm not sure if young Master Gu would be willing to help us out. Sacred Lord asked angrily, what? Zhao Tian said, I've long heard that Taishuan Sacred Land and the upper realms have some sort of connection, could it be? Chu Wuji laughed and said, the upper realms have been cut off from the sacred lands of the eastern wilderness for so long, would this Su Taishuan have such ability? Besides, with my Great Sun Empire limitless tower, even if a person of the sacred emperor realm comes forth, I can easily take them on. He stand up and raised the tower he was holding in his hand. Zhao Tian and Xiaohua looked at the tower and thought, an imperial artifact? Wasn't it said to have been destroyed during the 1000-year war? Tower shined in the air and became higher. Sacred Lord looked at it and thought worriedly, young Master Gu, if you don't come out of seclusion soon, this old man will meet his end here. Chang'e said worriedly, Father, I'll go beg young Master Gu right away. Chu Wuji asked Sacred Lord, Su Taishuan, do you really want to be destroyed because of the spiritual veins? Sacred Lord said angrily, cut the crap. Chu Wuji said again, stubborn old mule, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. The white light was emitting from the tower, but suddenly a purple shade light came and put pressure on everything. This pressure was difficult to hold for everyone. Everyone got worried. Sacred Lord became happy and said, this is. Chu Wuji asked angrily, who? Xiaohua said shockingly, this primordial spirit force that's comparable to the power of the sacred sovereign realm, could it be that Supreme Elder Su, that old foggy, is not dead? Chang'e exhaled and said, so, this is the power of the primordial spirit? Seems like everyone is already present. Then next, let's the show begin. Chang'e was running towards the Chang'e room and thought, the commotion just now must have made the masters from other sects wary. Father, you must hang in until I get to young Master Gu. Someone came behind her and put hand on her mouth. She screamed. Yi Chen out his finger on his face and said, it's me. She thought shockingly, Yi Chen, and asked him surprisingly, how did you get out? He held her hand and said, I'll explain later, I'm taking you out of this hellish place known as Taishuan Sacred Land now. She released her hand from his hand. He looked at her shockingly. She said, don't you get it? I'm never going to leave Taishuan's sacred land. Yi Chen asked her shockingly, Chinga, why are you being so stubborn at a time like this? Do you really think Gu Chang'e can save Taishuan's sacred land all by himself? Don't tell me, he's already forced you to. Chinga shouted angrily, shut up, young Master Gu never forced me to do anything. I'm the one harboring ill intentions and was trying to get in his good side all this time. I even tried to sell my looks in exchange for peace on Taishuan's sacred land. Yi Chen called her name shockingly. She shouted again angrily and tears came out of her eyes, will you be satisfied when you are done taking all my dignity from me? Yi Chen, what makes you think that I will betray this sect and leave with you? And what right do you have to assume that young Master Gu is the villain here? Taishuan's sacred land has spent more than a decade training you, but have you ever thought of helping out at a time like this? Yi Chen, your ego and selfishness disgust me. She wiped her tears. Master said to Yi Chen from Ring, let's get out of here, Yi Chen. But he doesn't listen to her and said, no, that's not possible. That isn't the Chinga I know. Gu Chang'e must have used some kind of spell on her. Window showed that, female lead has turned her back on Yi Chen, his fortune points have been decreased by 50 while the host's fate poets have increased by 250. Chang'e smiled and said, so this time has come. He opened the door. Both Chinga and Yi Chen looked at the door. Chinga said this is bad, and thought, I can't let myself be seen together with Yi Chen. She picked her sword and attacked on Yi Chen. She stabbed the sword in Yi Chen's chest. Yi Chen looked him shockingly and said, Chinga you. Master said Yi Chen, run, Yi Chen. Chinga said, I'm sorry, but I have to cut all ties with you. She drew her sword back. Blood fall on the ground. A yellow light made around him and covered his wound. Yi Chen said angrily, I see. Then, let's us meet again in the future. And jumped in the roof and leave. She looked him from behind. Gu Chang'e called her from behind, she turned and said, young Master Gu, Chinga has disappointed you. Chang'e said, you did a great job. However, you will have to fight him to the death the next time you meet. Are you sure you won't regret this? She replied, I won't, I knew this day would come sooner or later when I chose you. Chang'e put his hand on her head and said, good. She looked him confusingly. He hugged her and said, from now on, you can share your woes with me. She got shocked by his action and words and her sword fell from her hand. Chang'e thought, since Su Chinga ahs decided to end things with Yi Chen, I don't have to keep my distance anymore. After all, she is blessed with the great fortune and if she can prove herself to be useful to me, it's not such a bad thing either. Window showed that, a fortune incident has been triggered. The hosts of fortune points have been increased by 60 while the fate points have been increased by 300. Chang'e thought, so I can gain fortune points by subjugating people blessed with great fortune besides targeting fortunes chosen? Looks like I am going to have another way to leveling up. Chinga called him and said, the reason I'm here is because I urgently need your help. Chang'e said, I already know what's going on. Don't worry, they won't be able to lay a single finger on Taishuan's sacred land as long as I am here. She looked at him confusingly. He jumped while holding her. Sacred Lord was standing in front of the enemy and their forces. Zhao Tian laughed and said, Junior Su, we don't want things to look bad for us either. If the Supreme Elder is indeed alive, why don't you let us meet him then? Sacred Lord said angrily, although I don't know how you got wind of that, it's true that the Supreme Leader has passed on. Zhao Tian said again, then what was that primordial fluctuation just now? Xiaohua said, they are just playing tricks on us, we will find out once we force our way in. A loud voice came, quite. They all thought worriedly, he's here. Chang'e stepped in and stand in front of the Sacred Lord holding the Chinga and said, who are there barbarians who dare to disturb my peace? Chinga looked at the and said worriedly, 3. Chang'e whispered in her ear, nope, I'm sure these guys aren't the type to dine and dash. Xiaohua laughed and said, Sacred Lord Su, so the master you are talking about is just a brat? Have the Taishuan sacred land fallen this low already? Sacred Lord Su said, if I were you, I did take back what you said because this pastor is not someone you should mess with. Xiaohua jumped and said, well, let's find out. He attacked on Chang'e with a tiger he made by his power. Chang'e stand straight in front of him and a purple mana emitted from his body. Xiaohua attacked him with punch. Chang'e stopped his punch by his hand and hold one hand on his back. Xiaohua said shockingly, what? Chang'e hold his hand and put force on his hand. The shield on Xiaohua's hand broke and he fell back. They all looked at him shockingly. Xiaohua's hands was bleeding and he said, a sacred emperor. Zhao Tian said, impossible, how could there be such a young sacred emperor in the eastern wilderness? Chu Wuji was holding his tower and Zhao Tian and Xiaohua was standing behind him. Chu Wuji said, Rat, you are talented but you have to learn to keep a low profile. No matter who you are or where you are from, I suggest that you stay out of this. Chang'e said with smile, from now on, anything that happens to Taishuan's sacred land will be my concern. Chang'e called his name happily. Chu Wuji said angrily, since you are hell-bent on dying, you cannot blame me for being ruthless. We will face him together. They all ready to attack him together. Zhao Tian said, I'm going all out. Xiaohua attacked him with a huge weapon and said, take this brat. Chang'e stopped his attack by his hand. Zhao Tian attacked him with sword on the other side, he stopped his attack by the finger of other hand. They both shockingly looked at him. Chu Wuji raised his two fingers and said, fall. Chang'e pushed them away and the tower above of his head falling towards him. Chang'e looked at the tower and smiled. Chang'e called him worriedly. Chu Wuji laughed and said, so what if you're gifted? There have been many prodigies throughout history, but so few made it to adulthood. Xiaohua said, you are just another brat who does not know his limits. Do you really think you can fight all three of us just because you are in the sacred emperor realm? Chang'e looked at Sacred Lord Su and said worriedly, Father, young Master Gu. Sacred Lord Su said angrily, damn it, if it were not for the limitless power, they would not be able to lay a finger on young Master Gu. Chu Wuji asked Sacred Lord Su, do you have any last words? Xiaohua said, cut the crap, let's just force our way in and take over the spiritual veins for ourselves. They all looked at the tower confusingly. Cracks were made in the tower. Chu Wuji said shockingly, impossible. Tower broke into pieces and the Chang'e was alright and didn't get hurt. Chang'e said, in this world built stop social hierarchy, there exist many skilled masters, most sects in the lower realm could only bear so few sacred lords throughout their entire existence. While it's end harder to come across a sacred sovereign, anyone below the quasi-god realm are just lowly ants. They all looked at him shockingly. With his fingers he put pressure on them. They can't hold the pressure and fell down. Some were dead because of the power and some fall down. Xiaohua asked Chu Wuji, didn't you say that you could take on a sacred sovereign easily? Chu Wuji looked at Chang'e, blood came from his mouth and he fall. Zhao Tian gave him support. Chu Wuji asked Chang'e, who are you? Chang'e raised his finger and said, one with an infinite lifespan, a god from the upper realm. Half a month later, at the outskirts of the central state, in the street peoples were talking about the incident occurred in sacred land Taishuan. A man asked shockingly, what? The upper realm? The other replied, while ascension is extremely difficult, descending from the upper realms is impossible, this goes against the laws of the universe. First one said, it's true, the young master admitted it himself days ago. The other one also said, that's right, I heard that he defeated all the elites of the three forces jet while trying to invade the Taishuan's sacred land in a single blow, even the great Sun Empire's limitless tower was destroyed. A man in long hair said, look like Taishuan's sacred land is pretty lucky, after Supreme Elders was passing, they actually found another big guy. A fatty man said, it's only because of this Sacred Lord Su's daughter who is known as the #1 beauty of the eastern wilderness, right? They all laughed. A man in short hair said, this reminds me, wasn't there an inner disciple who went by the name of Yichen? Long hair man laughed and said, forget about him, it was bold of him to think he can compete with the young master for these saints. In the end, he was scared shitless by the young master's glance. Who does he think he is? He should take a good look at himself in the mirror. Does he think he's worthy of the #1 beauty of the eastern wilderness? A man passing bear them listened their talk. They all laughing at the situation, suddenly a fire started in the feats. The man in hoodie smiled and said, burn. The fire got extreme and they were started burning. People shouted, fire, there are people in the fire. It was Yichen in hoodie, he smiled and said, Taishuan sacred land, Gu Chang'e, what you did to me yesterday, I will be sure to pay it back 100-fold. Peoples were going to the Heart Hall, Sacred Lord Su was sitting on the throne. Chu Wuji said, the Taishuan sacred land is stronger than ever, as now we're in your care, Sacred Lord Su. Sacred Lord smiled and said happily, you flatter me, it was all thanks to young Master Gu. Chu Wuji, Zhao Tian and Xiaohua were sitting on the chair near to each other. They again said, yes, it's only thanks to the young master's generosity the other day that we're here now. From now on, the Taishuan sacred land will be our leader. We will do as you command. Chinga and Changa were sitting near to each other. Chinga coughed. Changa asked her, what's wrong? She smiled and said, didn't you hear what they said, young master? They've all lived for over a millennium, yet they still change their hearts as easily as 3 years olds. Changa took a sip of tea and said, really? If you would like, I'll make them do it a few more times. A girl came and stand in front of them and gave them a card and said, young master, Saintus, the third prince of the great Shao Empire of the Central State has invited all those with talent to attend a forum. Changa asked, the great Shao Empire? Chinga picked the card and said, it's a royal family from the Central State and no one knows how strong they truly are. Rumors say has data-skilled master ascended from among them a few millennia ago. As for the third prince himself, it's been known that our loud ring was heard across 3,000 miles on the day he was burned and it shows that he was infinite potential. Changa thought, the Central State? The mark left behind on the mind convergence pill indicates that Yi Chen is approaching the Central State as well. Looks like it's time for a change of plans. Who knows, maybe I would even meet new prey. Changa said send word to people that we'll leave in 3 days. Chinga said happily, yes, young master. She opened the door and went out. Changa was left alone in the room and he said, if I remember correctly, old Ming, you are from the Central State too, are not you? Ming appeared and said, yes young master. I ascended from the Central State of the Tianqing realm 30 millennia ago. When I first arrived at the upper realm, I was weak and forced into labor to mine the spiritual ores. It only thanks to the clan head that I was able to escape from that hellish place. Otherwise, I would have died in the mines a long time ago. Changa said, I see. Since we will be going to the Central State in 3 days, you can stop by and check on your family while we are there. Ming looked at him shockingly and said, I am grateful for your kindness, young master. Changa said, no need, old Ming. We're going to pass by them either way. He took a sip of tea and thought, as far left of kindness like this will not only strengthen to the old Ming loyalty to me but also showcase my benevolence. So what's not to like about it? 3 days after at the central heavenly city of the Central State. In the classroom students were sitting on their seats and teacher were delivering the lecture. Female teacher said, as the old saying goes, yeah everything in this universe has its own nature. One child you chi to harness life, one shall use spirits to harness minds. She looked at a boy laying his head on desk, she pointed him and said angrily, Lim Tian, you're dozing off in my class again. A boy turned and looked at him and said angrily, training together with the garbage like Lin Tian Idaoji Academy is a humiliation to us. If he did not come from the ancient family and his sister was not an elder at the academy, he would not be able to share a class with us. A girl also said, Elder Lin is really unlucky to have a such brother. Teacher shouted again, Lin Tain, are you listening to me? He wake up and shouted, this king is very upset. Everyone looked at him shockingly. A boy pointed him and laughed and said, this king? What a joke. What did this idiot dream about? Lin Tian asked angrily, who are you guys? Where am I? The boy said again, hey dumbass, have you gone nuts because you slept too much? I will tell you this, we are in Central Heavenly City, Central State, Tianqing Realm. Lin Tian said confusingly, Central Heavenly City, Central Heavenly City. He looked at his hands and thought, I see, looks like fate has other plans in store for me. Who could have guessed that the last remnant of my soul would possess a little boy like this? Teacher threw the roll on table and said angrily, how long are you going to fool around for? If you cannot reach this spiritual sea realm by the end of the month, you will be expelled from the academy. Even your family won't be able to help you. Do you think you can face your deceased parents without shame like this? Do you think you are worthy of the efforts your family put into training you? Everyone looked at him and laughed. Lin Tian laughed and thought, it's just the spiritual sea realm, how hard could it be? He stand up and opened his hands and said, I'm sure I'll advance within 1 day, those of you who look down on me, I will crush them all. Suddenly there was a lightning strikes outside. Everyone looked this shockingly and said, this is In the canal, a boat was floating in the water. Chang'e was sitting in the boat and window showed that a new fortune's chosen has been detected. Chang'e said, "He's here." An old man was sat and people were standing in front of him. They asked, "What happened? Why has the great elder suddenly summoned us here?" Old man said, "Today, I sensed our ancestor's presence." They looked at him shockingly. A man said, "Is he the one who ascended to the upper realm a few millennia ago, our ancestor Lin Ming?" Old man laughed and said, "Our ancestor has finally returned, there's still hope for the Lin family." In the boat, Chang'e was standing on the front edge of the boat and asked, "System, what's left of Yi Chen's fortune value?" System showed that, 230. Chang'e said, "Speaking of fortune value / it's because of the large fortune value difference between me and this post-fortune's chosen, right?" Window showed that, correct. As the host's fortune value gradually increase, the blackish will also gradually decrease. He thought, it seems like my appearance as an unknown variable has made it difficult for the heavens to protect the fortune's chosen. Window showed that his fortune value is still black. He thought, but why is my fortune value still black? Is it simply because I am the fated villain? Anyhow, looking at how things are progressing, everything's still under my control. Aren't you fortune's chosen has appeared, so I should conserve my energy. Chang'e got down from the stairs and stood in front of him and said, "Seems like you're in a good mood today, young master." Chang'e looked at her and saw his fortune value got up to 400. He thought confusingly, when did her fortune value go up to 400? No wonder my fortune value has been gradually increasing lately. Was it because of her? He pulled her towards him and said with smile, "With a beauty besides me, I certainly am," and thought, it looks like she's still hiding secrets that I have yet to uncover. Chang'e asked her, "We're almost at Zhongzhou. Why don't you tell me a little about the central powers here?" She replied with smile, "Okay, Zhongzhou is this split into 8 large cities, with the central heavenly city being the most prosperous one. It's also where the Xia dynasty 3rd prince's Daoist assembly is being held." Chu Xian came near to them and said, "How could a Daoist assembly of such a low level matter to the young master?" "Young master, just treat it as a joke." Chang'e replied, "I guess that's true." Chang'e thought, conversing Dao with a bunch of people from the lower realm? I'll do fine without attending such an uninteresting event. In the street, at a restaurant 4 mans were sitting on the table and talking together. One of them said, "Did you hear about it? Lin family's ancestor has returned to the lower realm." The other asked, "Are you talking about the one who ascended to the upper realm a few millennia ago, the quasi-god Lin Ming?" Third one said, "It's a lie, right? The upper realm's barrier has been closed for thousands of years." Fourth one said, "It's definitely true, I heard the Lin family's great elder announce it himself at the ancestral hall." Yi Chen, sitting on the table next to them, listened their talks and thought, someone from the upper realm? The ancient Lin family? If I did not have something more important to attend to, the Lin family's residence would have been a good place to stay. Girl Master told him, "An ancient family's background is unfathomable, since you're hiding so many things, you shout just." He said, "You're right Master, we need to find the remains as fast as possible," and thought angrily, "Gu Chang'e, just you wait." In the hall, Chang'e was sitting on the chair while Qingge and Ming were standing on the sides of him. People were standing in front of them and looking them confusingly. Someone said, "Is that ancestor Lin Ming? But who is the young man wearing a white robe and sitting on the family head seat? Even ancestor Lin Ming is being very respectful towards him." Chang'e said to mind, "Elder Ming, since we really come down to visit, you need not worry about me. Go and enjoy your time here." Ming bent his head and said, "Young master, what are you saying? Even if I am extremely happy, this old servant would never ignore you." Qingge thought, to think that there's someone like Elder Ming by young master's side. Chu Xian also thought, as expected of the young master. A man in the crowd thought shockingly, "Old servant? Did I hear that right? Is ancestor Lin Ming really calling himself old servant before that young man?" Everyone looked at them shockingly. Chang'e stand up and said, "Since Elder Ming is busy, I'll have a look around with Qingge, and hold her hand." She looked at him shockingly. People greeted them and said, "Farewell." Chang'e walked with Qingge. That man who was thinking earlier was looking like the head said, "Young master." He turned and said to someone, "Chiohan, since you're familiar with the area, hurry and guide the young master around." The girl who was the teacher of the academy said confusingly, "All right, father." She ran behind them and called Chang'e, "Young master." They stopped and looked at her. She said again, "Lin Qiuhan greets the young master." Chang'e said with smile, "Lin Qiuhan? Good name." He looked that her fortune value was 200. Qiuhan said, "Thank you for the compliment, young master." Chang'e said, "Well then, I'll have to trouble Lady Lin with guiding me and Qingge around." She replied with smile, "Of course." Lin Tian out his hand on heart and thought, this sudden pain from the heart was the original owner of this body infatuated with his own fucking sister? And said, "When have I, the god-slaughtering king, ever allowed such feelings to affect me?" He looked at Qingge and thought shockingly, "Wait, this woman, the nine profound beauty physique. Isn't this the perfect physique for refining? Lin brat, it looks like I'll be able to cure your heart sickness." To think that the young master they were talking about had such good luck. It's a shame that he's the one who has such a precious treasure. Chang'e looked at him with side and thought, I was just planning on searching for the fortunes chosen. Who would have thought that he did come to me himself? A fortune value of 500. However, I have not done anything to him yet, so why do I sense ill attentions from him? He looked at Qiuhan and thought, is it because of her? Very well, I hope that you'll live a little longer.